What's up, Taylor? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. Thanks for joining me, man. I glad to have you on the show. So I really wanted to hear more of your story because we've gotten to know each other a little bit more. We kind of knew each other on social media for a while, right? Just like throwing
Yep.
back and forth like Instagram messages, I would say. Then we
hmm
started meeting up and having some like lunches and talking more about business, and that was really cool. And just I know a little bit of your back end story, but I don't know a lot. So can you tell the audience like how long have you been in real estate? What got you into the business? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been in the business for right around 3 years now. I came from the finance industry, so it was just an easy segue for me to go into real estate and something that was also sales based. The finance industry was a tough one to crack, and so I figured I'm doing all the same activities in finance that a normal real estate agent would do: door knocking, cold calling, prospecting, all of that. And I talked with one of my good lender friends, and he's like, "Dude, what you're doing right now is perfect for real estate. There's so much going on in our industry right now. Why don't you check it out?" So I did. I looked into it and I researched brokerages and I figured out where I wanted to be, who I wanted to work with, and the rest just kind of went from there.
So tell me about that, just getting into real estate. It's not, some people knock it out of the park when they get in, most don't. And so what'd that look like for you, like getting started? Was it just did you go all in and leave the other job and start real estate full time?
Yeah, so I started real estate full time. I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I just knew that I saw a lot of people around me in the industry accomplishing big things, and I wanted to be a part of that too. So I just said, okay, we got to figure out what that looks like. For me, for the first like 6 months, it was actually really challenging. Figuring out what systems work, how I wanted to go about prospecting, where I was going to get these leads or clients from. I mean, it was challenging. You hear a suggestion and you run towards it for a little while and then it doesn't work, and then you hear another suggestion, you do that for a little while. So I just needed to find some consistency, but once I did, I mean, it took off from there.
So what consistency look like for you?
So I worked at a brokerage that actually generated seller based leads for us as agents. And when I got put into that role, I pretty much just became a closer. Like, my whole job was to take a transaction from listing it to getting that transaction, that listing closed. And once I started to do it, I mean, I was running 5 to 6 appointments per day, working with 10 to 15 escrows at a time. And it really scaled in a really, fast 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. And that 2 years went from literally like zero to over $100 million in real estate transactions and like 200 sellers during that time.
Wow. That's just out the gate.
I mean, like I said, it was like a 2 year process to get to that point, but that's what it built to. And it started really quick because once I got in that model and I kind of figured out my rhythm with what that system looked like, figured out how I could help sell better, how I could do better listing presentations. I mean, it really just started to scale and I was given more opportunities in the company and we just took it from there.
So were you putting the systems together or are those systems already there? Because I'm just thinking like 17 years ago when I got into real estate, I was like, I think what you did in those 2 years took me like six. And so like I just kind of built systems as I went, but like you were getting thrown more business than it seems like anybody could keep up with. So were you building the systems yourself or
No, so that's the thing. I was kind of living in a situation that other realtors are unfamiliar with. Like, a lot of realtors have to put systems in place to actually generate leads for themselves and then go close on them. I was just doing the back end of it. I wasn't generating the leads. The company was generating the leads for me, but because they were doing that, there was a large split that was associated with it. A lot of moving parts, transaction coordinators, support staff, all that kind of stuff. So really, my main focus was just on selling and on closing at that point. So that's all I really knew, and it was great for the time being, but I think that was definitely a season. It was catered to where the market was at, and I just ran with it.
so in the process of let's go from like lead comes in, then you've got to talk to them on the phone, sit at their kitchen table, put it on the market, get it pending. Where were you at in that on your team? Where were you at in that whole like assembly line? Like what was your main job in the day?
Yeah, so if a lead came in and we set an appointment, it was pretty much my job to just go out there and close it. So one, get the listing signed. There were a few of us that were within the company that had that role. Everybody else was kind of like a support staff. So, when I would go out and close, I would do that portion of it. Then it would be getting the sign ordered, getting the list or the listing photos ordered, writing the property descriptions, all of that. That kind of stuff was done behind the scene, and it might have been done with a partner of mine. So really my whole focus was just to get the listing signed and then help negotiate and monitor the transaction and just make sure that it closed.
Okay. Okay. So you weren't doing like all the back and forth with the like paperwork and the inspection period and the appraisal, or were you?
So I wasn't supposed to be, but I kind of have a hard time letting go with
Yeah.
that stuff. So I wanted to be as involved as I could. So I would take a lot of that stuff on, and I tell a lot of people that I went from A to Z on like everything. I did have partners and people who were kind of helping me behind the scenes just because there were so many transactions, so many clients, so many people to talk to all at the same time. But I took a lot of that on myself and really went from not knowing anything about real estate to knowing a lot about real estate in a short period of time because I tried to take on every part of that process.
So when you say there was a big commission split or a big split taken from the brokerage, what does that look like?
Well, it was kind of like a 50-50 type model, where they're providing the leads and that's what the split would look like. But then on top of that, there are transaction coordinators to pay, there's listing fees, photos, all of that kind of stuff to pay for as far as overhead. And then in a lot of cases, like I said, I had support staff or partners that I was working with. So again, there was an additional split of the 50-50 to go to that partner to compensate them for their role in the transaction as well. So really, by the time it got down to it, a normal commission, I would probably make like a fourth to a fifth of what that would normally look like.
Okay. But with you just being one section of the assembly line, do you feel like it was worth it, or was it just some like a market of the moment where like at the time it was right and now it's not?
I feel like it was definitely a market of the moment type thing. The biggest thing for me was, the production numbers were there, the client experiences were there, the transaction numbers were there, like the volume was there, which was really cool. It gave me a lot of experience right out of the gate to again go from not knowing much about real estate to servicing a couple hundred clients in a 2-year time period. So for that opportunity, I'm thankful, but it when you say like assembly line, like production, it really was that. I mean, it was a large corporation that was doing a lot of business in a specific area. And everything was focused around that process, that model, that company, the branding behind it. So it wasn't necessarily me, like as the agent, kind of helping to grow my business. It was more so just working as a part of the company and getting the job done.
And how were these leads coming through the door? So like you said, you were just getting leads from the brokerage and paying them a significant amount for those leads. How were
Right.
they acquiring these leads?
They were doing a lot of different advertisements. So, I mean, they would do TV advertisement, radio advertisement, online, internet lead generation, Rap City buses, all of those different types of things. I mean, they had a huge marketing budget that they were playing with monthly to be able to generate the leads that they were generating.
Okay. And so now with you making a transition because you've left that company, what was the biggest reasons of wanting to leave? Like what even like because sometimes I think we hear someone's story and I'm like, there had to be a day that you woke. I always want to go back like the 3 or 4 months before because people tell us the story like, oh, I did this and I left. But I'm like, I've made some big decisions in my life. And I feel like there's this like 5 or 6 months or 3 months before where it's kind of like you're waking up and it's like a subtle like feeling. And then the feeling, I feel like it's a little feeling. And then it
Mm-hmm.
starts compounding over time until like the compounding over time finally makes it to where the exit happens. I don't meet a lot of people where like just decisions made in one day. So what did that look like? I mean, because it sounds like you were rolling. And so what happened where you woke up one day and even had any doubt in that model or process?
So there were a couple things that happened. One, there was a recent change in that brokerage model and the structure of how they were operating things with their agents. So instead of being given leads at this point, we've grown to a point with that company to where they're now asking us to pay or help, support a part of that marketing budget that they had set aside for leads. So Now it's not just a lead coming in, it's paying for all of those leads and then going out and converting on the opportunities. So conversion percentages, in our industry, it's challenging. Even if you convert at a high level, you're not going to get every one of those leads to work with you. So now you're putting a lot of money out front and not knowing what that conversion process is going to look like and if that money is going to come back. So the first thing was just switching the brokerage model and asking us to contribute to what that marketing effort looked like. Then there were different splits that were aligned with the model as well. So it again kind of further took out of the agent's pocket to make it to where we had to do crazy volume to even make the type of money that another normal agent would make on just doing one transaction. I would have to do 4 or 5 to make that same amount of money. So I just looked at the model and I just said, it's very seller focused. It's catered to one side of the market. Not always are we going to be on that side of the market. It's not going to be the market of the moment that favors sellers all the time. So I just looked at the model and I just said, from a longevity perspective, there's got to be a way that I can take all of this experience, all of this knowledge of negotiation and listing presentations and buyer consultations and just working with all different types of clients and do it for myself. Like, not be so reliant on a company to give me business, but to actually go out there, create relationships, generate business, and do it in a way that isn't so catered to one side of the market. So I can be, working both sides of the transaction, working with a lot of different types of clients, and really just create a sustainable business model for myself. And also the branding aspect was a big thing for me too, because like I said, it wasn't, Taylor as the agent, it was more so the company that I was working with, which was 72 Sold. All of the branding, all of the transaction revolved around that model and that branding. So it didn't really feel like, even though I had worked with a couple hundred clients at that point, that those clients were really my clients. They were kind of clients of the company. I wanted to go out and create something, for myself that I could brand, be proud of, and, continue to build on going forward.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one positive I can see in that, man, is like, you got so many reps so quick. So I would look at that like college of real estate. Like, you put in more reps on transactions than some realtors do in probably their 20-year career. You know what I mean? So you just think of that, like what an asset that is in your portfolio of of experience. So, I mean, nothing's like, you can sit down and someone might be like, oh, you've only been selling real estate for a few years. But then when you pull out your numbers, you actually have sold more real estate than some people who've been they could be in their 50s and have been doing it for 20 years. Like, I'm saying the truth. Like, some people are selling 6 homes a year. So even though they've been doing it for a long time, that doesn't mean they've did a lot of transactions, but you got so much experience. Like, I would consider that like the college of real estate. So you paid a fee for it, but I mean, I think you're going to capitalize off it with that experience on your new endeavors. But it's kind of like when we say market of the moments, and I know I've talked to you about this, but I had about 2 markets of the moments over my last 17 years. And one was when the foreclosures were happening in like 08, 09. And that was a market of the moment. And then one was about 3 years ago. I had a Zillow Flex account. I was one of the few agents that had that account. And what was interesting about this, so I can relate to you in that whole kind of paying a large premium for the lead. And it does feel cool because you're getting like some business that just feels like it's like, it just comes to you, like you don't have to like work hard for it. But I think the difference in what I've noticed in our conversations with, like, when I had the REO accounts or an account, and then I had the Zillow Flex account, is I never had to attach myself to the brokerage. So I never had to attach myself to the brokerage in the sense that I could still run all my other legs of my business and not feel like I had to pay anything. So it was more of like, I just had to deal with that company. And, when Zillow Flex gave me a deal, I had to give them a referral fee. When the REO business came to me, I might have took a commission, that was a listing. So that might've been a commission hit to get more of a volume business. But I think where it was different is like, I get a lot of referrals, and that whole, like that 10%, that 10 or 20% that some of these brokerages want for our personal business. Like, after you do 15, 20, 30 personal deals, you're like, whoa, did I give my brokerage like 30, 40, $50,000? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's the difference, I think, is those markets are the moments when you're attached to the brokerage. Like, if Zillow Flex would have came to Tempe and opened up a brokerage and said, hey, Bowers, to keep this account, you've got to join our brokerage, and that's how you're going to get this business. and then you got to give us like 10 or 20% of your personal referrals. And I'd be like, ah, no, I'm good. Right. So I think that's the difference that we had with these market of the moments accounts. But with you being so new in the industry, like I think it's just smile about it because you got reps, man.
Yeah, and like I said, it's something that I'm really thankful for.
Yeah.
Like when you say attach yourself to the brokerage, like it was that, and it was so much to the point where like I was so busy that I didn't even have an opportunity to, work with personal clients, take on referrals. Like I was literally giving out buyers and some of my own personal clients because I had no bandwidth to actually work with them, which
Yeah.
which felt horrible. And I'm like, from that perspective, I'm like, this isn't how I want to operate. Like, it's great that I'm operating and I'm achieving at a high level, but at the same time, like, it's not what I want to do forever. So you're right. It was a really great opportunity for me to get a lot of reps in, to experience a lot of different things within the transaction, and to be able to, confidently talk to anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate now and have that conversation. But I just decided that I want it to look a little bit different going forward.
So you got the reps, right? So now it's I want to go out and do something different. What'd that process look like? What happened next? How'd that whole process look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you start to think that you are going to consider a different route, a different option, for me, it's just research. So I was just kind of out there looking at different brokerage models, looking at different people who were accomplishing things in our industry at a high level. And it's funny because I set a lot of meetings with them, and I've told people this since I made the switch. I'm like, every broker, every team, every individual agent that I talked with that was operating at a high level, none of them are really doing anything special, which I kind of laugh about because looking at it from an outside perspective, you would think that there was some kind of like secret sauce that they had in their business that was helping them accomplish at a high level. But I kind of realized that everybody just has their systems and they just do it consistently.
Yeah.
So I just had to figure out which system I wanted to align with and like who I wanted to partner with and work and be around. And I think that's when you and I started having that conversation of, hey, Chris, obviously I see that you're succeeding at a very high level. It's really impressive what you've done. And I've never met a person who does a referral based business to your level. So I'm like, I wonder what Chris is doing, how he's doing that. And so that's just where we open up that conversation because, like I said, I had talked with so many different brokers. I could have taken my same business and plugged it in at nearly any brokerage that I talked to, and it would have been the same. But if I wanted to really expedite that process and get things rolling the way that I want to, I knew that I had to be around some high producing, high level people that already had systems in place that I just wanted to duplicate and implement. And that's where you come in, man.
Right on. So yeah, it's so weird how you meet people, right? Like we met on Instagram. Like I remember we started having probably our most serious conversations when I think I was in Cancun.
Yep.
And that's like because we kind of communicated on Instagram. And then I remember being in Cancun. That's when we started having more intense conversations. I should say, like they got like deeper. And then when I got back, that's when we met up. So how did that conversation start escalating on Instagram? Do you remember?
I mean, I think the funny thing is like anybody that does anything at a high level, they don't need to be sold on something. Like people like us, I think we kind of get attracted to things versus being sold on them because it's like we have enough self-belief to know that we can go plug ourselves in anywhere and we'll have success. It's just how much success do you want to have and then how quickly do you want to get there? So for me, I looked at what you had accomplished, not only in the real estate side, but I'm like, okay, so Chris does this amount of business. This is what his systems look like. But outside of his real estate business, this is what his life looks like. And that's what was really attractive to me. I'm like, okay, Chris is taking vacations. Like, every month he's gone somewhere doing something cool. That's really cool. Like, I'm looking at what my life was like for the past 2 years. Doing 10 to 15 escrows at a time was cool. You're doing that right now. But guess what? You're taking vacations every month, and I was working 80-hour weeks. So I'm like, how do I make that transition? How do I have a little bit more balance in my life and be able to do cool things? And then at the same time, you're a big investor in real estate. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's a passive income stream. I started investing in real estate in the past couple of years as I was doing it for everybody else. So I looked at that and I'm like, okay, that's really cool. Like he could teach me a thing or two about investing in real estate and building a rental portfolio. So I just looked at what you have and what you've accomplished in your real estate career, and then also how you operate outside of your real estate business. And I'm like, wow, that's how I want to operate. That's how I want to, get to that point. And these are the things that I want to have outside of my real estate business as well. So, I looked at it from an outside perspective, and I'm like, that's really attractive to me, like how you function, what your life looks like. And, if there's a way to duplicate it, that's what I want to do.
Well, it's definitely duplicatable, man. So there's nothing, I mean, probably the biggest thing is hard work, and just getting hard work, getting the system set up and just somebody giving them to you. Thank you for the compliments. Usually when I'm interviewing people, it's them saying they went somewhere and they're talking about someone else, kind of, always an interesting feeling when you're interviewing somebody and they're talking about you in that move. So I appreciate that. And I'm thankful that you noticed. I mean, that really is, it's my heart, it's my intentions. And I hope that more people realize that. It's just like, I want people to realize that real estate can be like the coolest thing. Like it can be the coolest thing, but it can also be not the coolest thing. Like I've met a lot of agents that there's twofold, man. And it's like, they either can't get any business on their own and they're just starving, right? Or they're getting a lot of business and they're just overweight, they're divorced, their kids don't know them. And I'm just like, man, like there's got to be another model to plug into, like the poor model. Like I don't want to plug into that one, right? And like
Right.
the like selling a lot of homes and the divorce model and not like knowing anybody and not taking vacations. Like I don't want to subscribe to that one. And so yeah, I was just always like, I always wanted to go to masterminds with people. And when I'd find somebody that I liked, I'd always try to find out like, do they make good money? That was actually my first tier. It was, do they make really good money in real estate? Then my second tier was, are they a good person? Do they have a good family life? Do they have a good quality of life? And if they pass those two checks, I would take advice from them. But like if somebody was not making any money in real estate, I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need advice. But if they were making a lot of money, but then they've had two divorces, I'm like, like I don't really want to read that book, right? Like I want to find. So I just started hanging around with people who I'm like, so that was hard though to find those people where it's like you do good business, I feel like you have a good life, and I want to subscribe to that model. So I've just learned from some people, and so I'm basically, I think what I can do for you is just help you with that and try to get you to close a lot of deals and realize like you don't have to give up your life to do it. So what are you like most excited for? What's the most exciting thing right now for you that you just wake up and you're like, I'm just stoked. I'm stoked on this.
I mean, the first thing that I would have to say is that I'm building my own business at this point. So, like we touched on earlier, everything was so focused around my previous brokerage and what that model looked like. And, you know, I think getting to build my own business, to work with people that I want to work with, to operate the way that I want to operate, that's the most exciting thing to me because I know that I'm building it for me. It's going to be based on my efforts, what I put into it, and how I build it over time. So I think that's the thing that's most exciting for me at this point.
What's your what do you think the biggest challenge is going to be from going from depending on someone's lead to getting your own lead?
So I don't know any different, truthfully. Like when I came into the real estate industry, I didn't go to a traditional brokerage model first and get that experience and then transition to my previous 72 sold opportunity. Like I literally went just to 72 sold. So I don't know any different. I know of different ways that people generate leads within our business. But the interesting thing was, and this is what I was talking about with the brokerage model, they'll tell you, okay, cold call, door knock, circle prospect, farm, all those different things that we hear in our industry, but nobody opens their playbook and actually shows you how they go about those activities to generate business. You were the only person that did that for me. And I was like, okay, cool. Like here's the roadmap. Here's A, B, C, and D. Like all I have to do is that. And then here's what my result's going to be. So, it's a different process because I still don't know exactly what it looks like, but you gave me a roadmap on how to be successful with it that I can just plug into it and figure it out from there. So, that it's cutting that learning curve by a huge amount just by the stuff that you've already given me.
Why do you think more people don't make the move? Like, why do you think there's probably a lot of people right now that are at a company where they're very dependent on leads and, going off on their own sounds cool, but there's something in there that's like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. What do you think holds those people back from knowing that other realtors are doing it very successfully and have always been, knowing that other realtors have left maybe their said brokerage and are doing really well. And but they
Mhm.
still have like this self-doubt or insecurity that like they're only making money because of this whatever brokerage it may be.
You just touched on it right there. Self-doubt, insecurity. Um, and I think the other thing is too, it's like consistency, right? It's like working a W-2 job in comparison to owning your own business. Like everybody wants that monthly paycheck coming in. They think that that's secure. But what I realized was even when I was doing all of that business and it was, secure and stable and consistent, like I still wanted to build and expand on top of that. And people always talk about being capped as well. Like you can only do so much. I was at a level to where I physically couldn't handle any more escrows, any more clients. So I knew that in that position, I was capped at it. So I needed to move to a model that had unlimited opportunities for me to grow and expand. And that's why I chose this model. But it was a challenging transition. When you go from doing something well and it's very consistent and you're being compensated good to do that, it's challenging to make that decision to level up and to get out of your comfort zone and to make a switch.
Yeah, I call it this. I actually wrote a blog about it, and my wife, I screened stuff through her, and she told me don't post it. But I call it realtor employees. They're
Yep.
they're people who work for a brokerage that gives them leads. They're really just they're like high paid realtor employees, so it's not like a job where they've got to go to a job every day, but it's not fully in their control where they have unlimited potential like other realtors. So it's kind of this middle zone that I call it, like where you're making a good enough amount of money that you're comfortable. But like,
Yep.
is there another three, four, five, $800,000 left on the table every year? Probably. But like
Right.
it's placing that bet on yourself, just like a lot of realtors have and do, and they get to see the reward for it. But like that middle zone of that comfort, and like I said, I call it realtor employees. I don't know if that's fair or not. I don't
Yep.
go around saying that to people. I did write a blog on it. It might come out one day, but my wife's like, no, let's hold off on that one because sometimes I write my thoughts out on paper and then I write it into a blog, and
Yep.
then she's the one who's got to like it's got to pass the test and see like is this allowed to go into the world or should people hear what my brain has to think, and she's like I don't think so. So do you feel like that's a somewhat accurate portrayal of that position?
100%, man. It's being more of an employee of the company at that point than again operating your own business, which is why I'm so excited about this model and to be running things the way that I want to run them, have a lot more opportunities and just, be around high level people like yourself. So
Yeah.
that's the really cool thing about this. But, I think as far as a realtor employee as well, you hit it on the head because there are models that are like that now. Zillow is acquiring their employees that are agents that represent Zillow-based listings. Realtor.com is doing the exact same thing, open door offer pad. Like that model is already existing. And I think it's going to be more prevalent
Yeah.
as realtors figure out this is a really tough arena to play in right now. And if you're not playing at a high level, like good luck because you're going up against people like you, people like me, companies with millions and millions of dollars in marketing, advertisement, budgets that it's really hard to compete with right now.
It is, man. Well, dude, you're gonna win big. I just know it when I see it. Like there's just certain people who have it, and I say that like truthfully. Like there's certain people who have it, there's some people who don't. And you just know when someone has when someone has good work ethic and they can just take a playbook. Because what's interesting is you had a playbook and you followed it and you were successful, right? So now all
Right.
you're doing is you're just in a new business model. You've got a new playbook. And what's cool about this playbook is it's just given to you and you get to make the rules. You can scratch the playbook and be like, I don't want to run that play. I do want to run that play. I can add to this. So you've got a lot of more, like, you've got a playbook, but you get to do what you want with it, where you don't just
Right.
have to follow like anybody's rules. You get to do whatever you want. But dude, you're going to win so big. I'm looking forward to having you on like in the next year, and we're gonna have like this huge success story of the transition. But I know you're already seeing it, dude, because I know when you moved over, you've already taken listings, you already got buyers, you're rolling with. So I mean, you're already seeing it. So what would be the last words for somebody as we're ending now? Because I know you got a hard stop to get on a call, but what would be your last words for a realtor that might be in your position where they're thinking like, hey, I actually like I want to bounce, like I really want to go, but I hear the word a lot like, oh, this brokerage feels like family, or these are my friends, or I don't know if I can make it on my own. What would be those last words that you want to leave for those people that are listening to this and they're just like, I feel like I was Taylor, but he actually made the move and I didn't. What can you say to him?
The biggest thing that I would say is just be open to opportunities. Like if you're open to opportunities, you would be surprised at what is out there. and what's available to you to help you take your life, whatever that is that you envision for yourself, to the next level. Like, just be open to it. Have conversations, meet with good people, and you'd be surprised, what that opportunity is going to look like.
Right on, buddy. Well, hey man, I know you got to get going. Thank you so much for the conversation. Go win the day, man.
Sounds good, Chris. Appreciate
Later,
it,
bro.
man.
Bye.